This is Surviving as a Civilian. I am your host, Scott. With the help of my friend Andrew, we created this podcast to share success stories of combat veterans and how they overcame the challenges of returning back to civilian life. These are actual stories told by actual veterans. Content warning, this podcast talks about war, and some of the stories in this podcast contain graphic events of violence and may contain explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Additionally, these veterans are telling their story of how they recall the events. Some of the details may have changed over time. All right, welcome to Surviving as a Civilian. This week's guest is Charlie. Charlie, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this with me.
No problem.
All right, let's get into it. What branch of the military did you serve in?
I was in the Army.
For how long?
So I did 6 years active duty total.
Okay. And why did you pick the Army?
So the Army, I don't know. I always wanted to be a soldier, and kind of the Army was kind of it for me. Anytime I thought about the military, it was the Army. So there wasn't really, I didn't really have any other options as far as decisions. It was always going to be the Army. So.
How old were you when you joined?
So I had just turned 18 when I joined. I had known my recruiter for, like a year and a half before I was old enough to join.
Okay. Boy, that's a lot of dedication on the recruiter's behalf, huh?
Well, okay. He was a recruiter at school. You know, everyone kind of knew him. He was just around for a couple of years. So I basically just had to wait until I turned 18. So.
Gotcha. So you joined at 18, you said?
Yeah, I was 18. It was like the very beginning of my senior year.
When you signed the contract?
Yeah. So I signed my contract, and I basically went through my entire senior year already signed up. Just waiting.
Do you have any family members that were in the military or are in the military?
So, I mean, I wouldn't think anyone's really close. I have my grandfather, my dad's dad. He was in the Navy long time ago. But that's about it. I don't really come from a military family at all.
How did your parents react to you wanting to join at such a young age?
Oh my gosh. Shocked, in disbelief. They tried to bribe me, you know.
How?
It was just, you know, I was the baby. I was the only girl. My dad was kind of, give it some more thought, you know, go travel. I'll pay for you to go and travel. I'll send you to school. And, you know, I was like, no, I'm doing this, whether you like it or not. And I did. And I mean, they're very proud of me, but it was very hard for them at first.
So what year did you join?
Effective. It was, so I joined in 2006. I left in 2007.
So right in the middle of it all, huh? Both wars going on?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so what was your job? What job did you pick?
So it was at the time 97 Echo. Today it's a 35 Mike. So that's the formal description is a human intelligence collector.
Okay, explain what that is exactly.
So basically, lots and lots of training, but our main goal, our main mission was source operations and debriefings, interrogations, those types of things. Okay,
I got you. It's probably carries a pretty high security clearance level, so I won't ask you too much.
Yeah. It's. I mean, there's a lot to say and to talk about. but it was an interesting job. I was happy with my choice, really.
So you said you did a total of 6 years active duty?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you had 2 years of IRR?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get called back for it?
Did I what?
Did you ever get called back on IRR?
Like, I'm not sure what you're saying. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. What rank did you leave the military?
I was an E5. I was a sergeant.
Nice. Congratulations. And how many deployments did you end up going on?
So I did 2 with the Army, and I did 1 as a civilian.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What were the 2 you did in the Army? What years were they?
So I did Afghanistan 08, 09, and also 2011, 2012.
Okay. Both Afghanistan, right?
Both Afghanistan, yeah.
And what
Yep.
what was the jobs that you did on both those deployments? Were they the same type of jobs, like your mission?
So the deployments of the Army, yes, in a way, it pretty much is the same. It kind of all depends, because at that point we are kind of an asset. However, whoever I'm attached to at that time, what their mission is. So, for example, if I was attached to someone who were more so near a bigger fob, I would probably have been in the detention facility, working with detainees. I was not, so I was out and about. So it just kind of depended on who I was attached to at that time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think being a female and being the job that you had, you were probably a pretty big advantage to most of the line units, correct?
Yeah. It was really. I'm not going to say it was easy. It was extremely difficult at first. I was 19, my first deployment. My first gig, and some of the training, even just going out into the field beforehand, is kind of, hey, we're going to drop you off, walk into the talk, find the commander, and give him your briefing, and it's just, you have to really just go in and find your way from the very beginning.
And you were attached to, on the first deployment, who were you attached to?
So originally, when I first went out, I wasn't attached to anyone. I was with Brigade for about a month, and then they got new battle space, and I went out with 425, and went out to establish new battle space at that time. So 425 Field Artillery.
And that's where you did your collection with?
Yep, my first tour. Mm-hmm.
How was it being a female, your first tour, working with, I think Field Artillery is all male. Well, it was at that time anyway. How did that work out for you?
So I think the hardest part really is just establishing any kind of relationship, because how it happened, it happened so fast. It was, hey, PFC Johnson, pack your stuff, we're dropping you off somewhere. I was like, okay. So they just kind of, I had never met these guys before. And I hop in a convoy, and they take me, I guess it was about 2 hours away from the fob. And they dropped me off, and it was basically in the middle of nowhere, just a patch of dirt. I got all my stuff out, and they just kind of left. So I was just waddling around trying to find anyone. And it's just, there was nothing there. It was just dirt, and we basically just had to build that cop out up. And but it's always very difficult at first, because, and I don't know if it's just being a female, I'm sure everyone deals with this, but just establishing that relationship, trying to gain at least a little bit of respect.
So they dropped you off by yourself? You were the only one that they left at that?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Pretty rough, but you survived it, huh?
I did. And I'm sure you'll understand this, and others who've listened to this or who have done this. It's as crappy as it was also an awesome experience in a way. There's just a lot of camaraderie, especially in that kind of environment where you have nothing. You don't have bathrooms, you don't have showers, you don't have beds, you don't have anything. It's just you're doing day patrols and you're doing night patrols, and that's your life. Pulling guard occasionally. So, yeah.
So you did that for that whole first deployment? You were attached to those guys the entire time?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, what about your second deployment?
So my second deployment, I was attached to 371 Cav. That deployment was different. At that point, I came out there. I didn't know 371 at the time because originally I was attached to 287, and then we switched around our people throughout our teams a little bit. So I ended up deploying and meeting up with the 371 guys. So I kind of had to start that relationship very similar to my first deployment.
And you had a team this time, though? It wasn't just you individually?
Yep, this time I had a team. It kind of, my team kind of switched up a bit throughout the deployment for various reasons, but it started off, it's usually about 3 or 4 of us, myself, and there were three male sergeants who were on my team as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which deployment was worse, your first one or your second one? Army ones.
So I'm thinking of, in terms of worse. So I would say maybe my first one because I was so young, I didn't know what to expect. It was, I went on my first patrol, and those nerves just kind of get you. So I think maybe I would say possibly my first. My second had its ups and downs, of course. At that point, I didn't really have a home, so to speak. I was just I was an asset in whatever troops needed me for whatever mission at whatever time. I was kind of just bounced back and forth all over the place. So it was a lot of work. Lots of caffeine pills.
So you said you did a third deployment outside of the Army?
I did.
Are you allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about some of it.
All right.
So I really didn't get a whole lot of, I'm leaving the Army and going to civilian world at first because before I got out, I'd already been putting myself out there as far as, putting my resume on different things. And so I had gotten a lot of offers, a lot of hits. And ultimately, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go back to Afghanistan. No big deal. And so what I did was I had already had the offer. I already kind of knew I was leaving in a few months. So I went home to Texas. And I just spent time with family for a few months, and then I left. So I went over as an intelligence analyst, which was not something that I had necessarily done before, but it was in the realm. I was a human analyst, particularly. So, and at that point, I kind of sat. It was very difficult for me because I was so used to being out every day. In this deployment, I was a civilian sitting in a compound, like no windows, just sitting behind a computer all day for 7 days a week. So I think that was my worst deployment.
Okay. Are you allowed to say where you're at? I mean, specifically on that one or not?
Yeah. I was in Kandahar. I was at CAF.
Okay, gotcha. What years was that?
So that was I left for training, and then something around like late November of 2013, and I came back December of 2014.
Oh, so you had just gotten out of the Army, huh?
Yeah.
And went right back over there.
Really, yeah, it was really cool. It was not even a transition, really, because I was still working for the Army, sitting in an office with the Army. It was kind of almost like I'd never left.
So of those 3 deployments, probably the first 2, what was the funniest thing you ever come across? You probably got a lot of stories being a collector.
Oh, gosh. I have some, like, probably inappropriately funny things, but let's find something cleaner.
This isn't a PG podcast.
What?
This isn't going to be a PG rated podcast.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you 2 things, and you can decide which one to delete.
Oh, I don't delete, Charlie.
Okay, so yes, being a collector, I talk to a lot of people, and I did have a man who I was talking to. He would come to me so concerned, he hadn't been married for that long. He was a little bit younger, and he was so distraught. He couldn't understand. He was like, my wife is not giving me children. I don't understand. Maybe there's something wrong with her. Don't ask. Somehow we got into the conversation of anatomy and where things were. This poor guy legitimately was putting it in the wrong hole his entire time, his entire marriage, and he didn't understand. I had to like sit there and explain to him, well, honey, this is how you do it. You're doing it wrong, and and I mean, he actually looked at me with such disgust.
Oh man!
I would even suggest that he put it in the right place, because he said, and you're welcome for this, he said, but she bleeds from there. That's disgusting.
Well, I see his point.
I think you know what I mean. I mean, it's ridiculous. He was so disgusted by it and did not understand the anatomy at all whatsoever. And those are just the conversations. It's some weird things. I also had a favorite guy. I used to walk down, take a few guys and walk down to one of the kind of the A&P checkpoints, and probably not smart now that I look back on it. And I would go and kind of chit chat with the police and the police chief, and there's this guy there who was the best entertainment. I called him Smokey because he was always high, really high. He wore like dark eyeliner, had red hair, was very flamboyant, and used to just lay around everywhere and laugh. And he was so high, and every time I'd show up, I'd be like, Smokey! What's up, Smokey? And he'd just laugh and giggle. I mean, there's just little things like that. People that you interact with every single day. definitely entertaining.
I'm actually very surprised that the males talk to you over there, because I know it kind of wasn't it was kind of a forbidden thing.
You know, that's something that's frustrating to me. Simply because, well, for a few reasons, and stop me because I will go on a tangent. I had no issues talking to men. I would hold my own shuras in the middle of a village with all of the male elders. That was very normal. I wore my hair down in a braid. You know, they were very aware that I was a female. And there was always, you know, every time, even in my training, you know, and any of those cultural classes we have to take before we go over, someone standing there talking to us and telling us what the culture's like. And there were times where, you know, especially after my first deployment, I was like, shut up. That is not the case, you know, from someone who was out there talking every single day. You know, people would be so confused, and they'd say, why aren't you covering your hair? That's disrespectful. Like, I know it's not disrespectful. Trust me, if I was covering myself, they would not talk to me. They would treat me exactly the way that they treat their women who are covered up. There would be no interaction. So
you took a different approach toward it then, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
Good. And apparently it worked.
It did. It worked. I have one of my from 371. Our commander. This is very funny because he, you know, we both have he has, you know, an agenda when he's out. I have an agenda as well. But it would always come down to, sometimes they would only talk to me, and then sometimes they would talk to him, and it would kind of get. So we kind of would say to each other every time we were out, he's like, you stay on your side of the road, I'll stay on my side of the road, you know, like, let's not mix our agendas here. So it's very funny.
So on a serious note, what are some of the things that happen over there that are probably going to stay with you for a while?
Like what? Like what are you looking for?
Well, you must have seen a bunch of fairly bad stuff when you were over there, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to, like, I don't want to sound like I'm heartless or anything. I just, you know, I think about, you know, constantly, as I'm sure everyone else does, you know, people that I used to know, people that I used to care about, you know, not making it home. But just, you know, the culture, things that I can't unsee as far as the way that they treat children. I mean, you kind of have to look the other way sometimes, but it's very hard. So, I used to work with a somewhat important person, and I would show up at his compound and, you know, knock on the door, ready for our meeting, and he'd open the door, and he was just like disgustingly sweaty, and there's like a tiny, like a little boy sitting on his bed, you know, like, and he's like, oh, trying to shake my hand. I'll be right out. I'll be right with you. And I'm kind of like, well, shit, I don't want to talk to this guy. And then it was so normal.
Yeah. It's got to be hard.
But outrageous. There's a lot of stuff.
So you did your last one for the contractor job was in what year? You said it's 2014?
All of 2014, yeah.
Okay. All right. So you got out of the contracting business, huh?
No.
No? Oh, you're still in. Okay. I got you. All right. So what do you do now then?
Well, it's interesting. So when I came back from Afghanistan the third time, I kind of was like, I'm going to take a break. And I went to school for a little bit. I spent some time with family. And then I decided, to go back to work. And I was super burnt out. I really was. And I I moved to Arizona, and I was a contractor for Raytheon. I worked as an instructor for a course at Fort Huachuca for a while, and then and then I got an offer to completely go the opposite direction in my career. So basically, after 10 years of working for DoD in the intelligence field, I became a project manager. I was an IT project manager for Charter Communications in St. Louis.
Okay.
I'm still a project manager, but now I actually I'm a contractor for Veterans Affairs.
Oh, congratulations. Nice.
Thank you.
So you have a lot to say about this stuff then, huh?
I do. I have a lot to say. I work on the Veterans Benefits Administration project. That's one of my projects.
Okay, so what is that then?
Well, there's so many, like, just various projects that that's in progress. It really differs. Some of the projects may be like working on, a new type of financial system for, VBA. Some might be some projects that other people are working on is more related to like the cemeteries and funding and different things for the cemeteries. So it's ongoing. So it's a total 8-year contract. And those are the two projects out right now, but different projects are just going to be coming out in waves for the next several years.
So do you feel like, so let's back up a little bit. Before you got out, now that you know what you know, do you feel like the military helped you get out or help you transition to be a civilian?
I really don't.
Okay.
I think that it's a little bit harder for me to say because I didn't really get out.
Right.
I still was very, very much working within the Department of Defense in various ways. Even when I was deployed again, when I was back in the States, I was an instructor. I taught my job to people in uniform every single day. And I worked on a base. So it's a little bit different because I don't feel like I truly transitioned for quite some time. But I would say, there are different things as far as it's almost kind of like when you're in the military, it's a bubble. It is what you know. But for the most part, so when you get out, it's difficult because if you don't have, first of all, a support system of any kind, it's going to be very, very difficult, near impossible to really feel like you're getting on track, even down to the smallest things that we should have all known, for many years about, health insurance and different, things like that you have to do as an adult. There's just a lot of things, but I really think that having a support system is, I'm lucky that I had such a big support system, not only just like my family and, friends, but, I stayed in touch with so many of my, my battle buddies, so to speak. So it's hard to say for me.
So what do you think? What do you think they could do better though? What could SFL tap? I guess what they call it now.
Huh?
They call it SFL tap now. I don't know what they called it when you were in.
Oh, it's one of those things that it's such a blur to me. Nothing was memorable, if that makes sense. So when I was doing my, kind of out processing or whatever, nothing was really, nothing stood out to me. I couldn't even tell you today exactly what I did to out process or in that aspect. But I think I don't think that they prepare you enough. And I mean, this is a big, obviously a big subject, and it's not just the military, it's all of, the United States and actually discussing, mental issues, and actually helping you identify or preparing you for, hey, here are some signs, some things that you really need to look for. And, just putting it into your head that when you're getting out, it's okay to kind of be selfish in a way. It's okay to take care of yourself and to ask questions and to, be vulnerable, because we're basically, it's drilled into us that we're, don't be an asshole. Don't show weakness. But I think that, and I can even speak for myself on this subject, that it was, it took a long time for me to actually take care of myself and understand certain things. And maybe that's just my pride speaking, but it's just my opinion.
Do you feel like, so have you had any interaction with the VA then, the hospital?
Yes.
You still are?
Not so much, but it's more so, I never really had like the greatest experiences, and actually this year has been the worst.
Why is that?
So I have never gone to a doctor for a legitimate injury that is documented in my medical records and have someone push depression on me so much.
So explain that a little bit more. I don't understand.
So I have a pretty significant ankle injury from my second deployment and a back injury. So I got out, you get out and you do the basic, okay, here's my whatever disability. I didn't really think too much of it. That then was my pride, of course. But I got out, they gave me like, 30% disability. I was like, cool, whatever. It is what it is. And, I immediately went to work. So I always had really great, insurance through working for different companies, especially I was overseas and on bases. So my interaction with the VA was somewhat limited. So I guess it was about last year, but I don't know if it's just getting older. I have no idea. But my injuries are just are so much worse now. Like my ankle, I can't get out of bed in the morning without like having to hop around on it and get used to it. If I stand up too fast, like I could probably fall over. Just little things like that never were apparent to me, probably because I didn't take care of it. The Army didn't take care of it. So anyways, so I decided, okay, I'm at this point, I'm 30 years old, so let me just go and get a primary care doctor, get an appointment. I haven't had an MRI since 2012. So anyways, it took, a month to get my appointment. I go in, and it just so happens that couple of days before, I had a really bad episode with my back, embarrassingly so. I was very emotional about it because I'd always been extremely, healthy and athletic, and now I have, my injuries are just kind of taking over me a little bit. So anyways, I'm sitting there waiting for the doctor, and I had to sit there and wait for 45 minutes. And so when she finally came in, it was this teeny tiny little lady. She comes in, and I just obviously did not look like I was happy. I was in pain. I was, unhappy that I was sitting there waiting for so long, missing work. So she comes in, and we start having a conversation, and I have this list of things that I really wanted to talk to her about. And one of them being, I know all of this stuff is in my medical records when I got out, so it's very, very simple to look at. And I told her, I was like, my extremities go numb so often now that I went on a long walk and I almost fell over because I couldn't feel my feet, and in like my shins. Or my hands. And I'm talking to her, and I'm trying to tell her, I don't know if there are any tests. I have no idea what it is. Do I need to do something, a circulation test? I'm not a doctor. So I just know it's not normal. So she legitimately looked at me and was like, she put her chin on her hand, like rested it on her hand, and she was like, well, tell me, why do you think that is? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer you. I'm not sure what you're asking. And she's like, well, I'm just curious at why you think that's happening to you. I was like, I don't know. I have a back injury, a lower back injury. I mean, that could have something to do with it. But she was just looking at me strangely, and she started asking if I was depressed. And I was like, well, no, I don't know what this has to do with it. I was like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm fine. I'm just concerned about my injuries that seem to be so much worse, and I'd like to have a conversation about it. And so she just kind of looks at me, and she's just being very odd. So we start, we keep talking, and I was telling her, I was like, well, I would really like to get a new MRI on my ankle and my back because my injuries have, I feel them so much more now that it's concerning me. And she's like, no, I don't think we need to do that. We'll give you an X-ray. I was like, well, that's not going to do it, but okay. So we start talking a little bit more, and she's pushing depression again. And I'm very frustrated with her because she's not listening to me. And she said, well, there's nothing that I can do for you for chronic back pain. And I was like, and I was so mad, I started crying. Of course, the worst thing that I possibly could have done.
She's trying to sell you that you're depressed. Right.
Yeah. I'm crying because I want to punch you. That's why I'm crying. And I'm like, and I don't know how to get through to you. Really, I'm so frustrated. And so she sends, gives me a tissue and whatever. And she's like, now, she looks at me, she's like, now, why did that just happen? I'm like, I don't know. Like, lady, listen to me. And she's just like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Do you want some kind of muscle relaxers? And I was like, and I'm not a pill person. Even throughout the Army, throughout everything, if I prescribe pills, I usually don't even pick them up. So I never wanted to feel like I needed them to survive. So I was like, I've tried a couple of those before. They don't do anything. If I do take them, they make me sleepy. I don't care about pills. I want to have an MRI, and you tell me exactly what the issue is. Will I need surgery? I just want to know these things. I'm here for information, not for drugs. And she's like, well, I just think that, maybe just take like 10 of them. I was like, fine, I'll take 10 of them. That's fine. I still have like 6 to this day, and this was in March. So anyways, and she's like, now, do you want to see a counselor? I'm like, I think I'm done here. Like, she also said, she's like, I just knew, like, as soon as I walked in, I looked at your face and I thought, this is a really unhappy person.
Was this an older lady or younger lady?
Oh, she was probably like early 40s.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was just such a terrible experience because I was having so many issues, and so it was just terrible. So she also said something very strange. We were talking about, I was talking about how, being athletic and everything, and ever since, I've been feeling this way, I'm like, I feel like I'm gaining weight and I'm not as active as I used to be because I'm concerned. And she was like, she goes, oh, like, I know. I mean, especially like us women, I swear, if I gain 1 pound, I just want to kill someone. And I'm like, I need to leave right now.
Did you ever end up seeing her again?
No, never.
I
went to, yeah.
Have you had the same, since your experience with the VA, have you ever had the same doctors 2 times in a row? Or do they always change?
So when I previously, I guess it was 2015 when I was living here in Austin, I had the same doctor, but I only went twice because I'm not very good at going to the doctor in general. So, so I guess I'd only been with the same doctor twice.
Okay. Other than that, they keep switching out?
What?
Other than that, they keep switching out?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a complaint with quite a few of you guys that got out. It's never the same doctor 2 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate.
Yep. Well, you don't build a relationship with anyone.
Right. And
especially with
Collis was saying a lot of them will just go to the VA to get their feet wet and get a little bit of experience and move on to a different practice.
That's interesting.
That's probably what happens. So let me ask you one last question, then I'll let you go because I know you got a lot of stuff to do. If you could give any advice to someone getting out or about to get out of the Army right now that you wish you would have done differently, what would it be?
I think it would have been, beforehand, having your plan as to, and that's to say for everyone, is to get out and have a definitive plan, even down to the smallest things like your health and mental. Just take care of yourself. Be near your family. Utilize that support system however you need to. It's really important. It's really going to help you out. It took me a little while to kind of, because I don't think I ever stopped moving and being away from my family until this year exactly. So, I was gone for 12 years basically. And that support system is really helpful. So, that's pretty much my advice.
Get a support system before you get out.
I mean, and just plan ahead, really.
Gotcha. Well, Charlie, I appreciate you spending time with me. This is probably going to help a lot of people, I feel. You're the first female we've had on so far, so I really appreciate all your insight, and I'm very proud of what you've been doing and what you're doing now. It's always good to see somebody getting out and having a successful life outside of the military.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Before I go, on behalf of Andrew and I,
we would like to thank all the veterans we talked to for taking the time to share their stories with us. We created this podcast to show not just the military, but everyone that you can make it through some of the toughest times in your life and come out on the other side on top. Here at Surviving as a Civilian, we cannot stress enough the importance of getting help if you need it or giving help if you can. Sometimes it could be as simple as making a phone call or answering that phone in the middle of the night from someone you haven't heard from in a while. If you or someone you know is struggling, help is available at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or text the word HOME to 741-741. If you think your story can help someone out and you want to share it with us, please email us at survivingasacivilian.casting@gmail.com. Subscribe and rate this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcast. Like and follow Surviving as a Civilian on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Until next time, get help if you need it, or give help if you can.